Owen Caldwell sat in the back of his car, scrolling through the latest customer complaints on his phone. One, in particular, made his stomach turn. A teenage boy had been kicked out of one of his restaurants after asking for food, and worse, an employee had been fired for feeding him. "This can't be happening in my company," Owen muttered under his breath. He had built this restaurant chain from the ground up, starting with a single location and working his way up. He prided himself on creating a business that treated employees and customers with respect. But in recent years, as the company expanded to 5 locations, he had delegated more control to managers and district supervisors. Maybe too much control. Owen had heard complaints before, some about poor management, others about rude service, but this, firing someone for basic human kindness, that was unacceptable. He had no idea who the manager in question was. He had never personally met the staff at this location since it was one of the newer stores. Most of the employees wouldn't recognize him anyway. His face wasn't plastered on company walls, and he rarely did public appearances. "Time to see the truth for myself," he said, pulling up a picture of himself on his phone. With a full beard and slicked back hair in his corporate headshots, he looked nothing like the man he saw in the rearview mirror. He had shaved, put on thick-rimmed glasses, and dressed in worn-out jeans and a faded hoodie. He looked like any other guy applying for an entry-level job. By the time he reached the restaurant, he was just another applicant named Owen, eager for a trainee position. The manager, a broad-shouldered man in his 40s named Greg, barely glanced at him during the interview. "You got any food service experience?" Greg asked, leaning back in his chair. "A little," Owen said. It wasn't a lie, he had worked every role when the company first started. "Fine, we're short-staffed, so you start tomorrow. Minimum wage, no freebies, no nonsense. You follow my rules and we won't have a problem." Owen nodded, keeping his expression neutral. He had a feeling Greg wasn't the type to waste words on kindness. The next morning, Owen started his first shift. Within the first hour, he saw how chaotic things were. The kitchen was understaffed, the front counter was overwhelmed, and Greg barked orders without lifting a finger to help. Employees rushed around, trying to keep up, but it was clear they were struggling. Then he met Bailey Evans. She was moving fast, taking orders at the register while keeping an eye on the kitchen. Unlike the others, she smiled at customers, even when she was clearly exhausted. "You're the new guy?" she asked, handing him a tray of food. "Yeah, Owen," he said, placing the tray on a counter for pickup. "Good luck," she said with a small laugh. "You'll need it." By lunchtime, Owen saw firsthand how bad things were. Greg yelled at employees for minor mistakes, ignored customer complaints, and took extended breaks while the staff picked up the slack. Then, the moment that changed everything happened. A teenage boy, no older than 16, walked into the restaurant. His clothes were torn, his hair messy, and he looked like he hadn't eaten in days. He hesitated near the counter, eyeing the menu. Bailey noticed him immediately. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked gently. The boy hesitated. I don't have money, but I was wondering if you had anything left over." Greg, who had been lounging near the back, sat up straight. "We don't do handouts here. You wanna eat, you pay." Bailey's jaw tightened. She glanced at the food under the heat lamp's several sandwiches that would likely be thrown out by closing time. Without hesitation, she grabbed one, along with a bottled water, and handed it to the boy. "Here," she said, "just take it." Greg slammed his hand on the counter. "Are you serious?" Bailey turned to him, standing her ground. "It's just one sandwich. We throw out food all the time." "I don't care," Greg snapped. "You're stealing from the company. Get your things and get out. You're fired." The restaurant fell silent. Employees stopped what they were doing. Customers watched in shock. Bailey looked stunned. "What, for feeding someone?" "You heard me," Greg said, pointing at the door. "I won't have rule breakers working here. Get out before I call security." Owen clenched his fists, forcing himself to stay quiet. He wanted to step in to stop this, but he needed to see how far Greg would take it. Bailey's eyes burned with frustration, but she didn't argue. She took off her apron, threw it on the counter, and turned to the boy. "Eat somewhere safe, okay?" she whispered before walking out. Owen watched as she disappeared through the door. Greg turned to the rest of the staff. "Anyone else want to break company policy? No, then get back to work." Owen knew this was it. Greg had no business running this store, and Bailey, she deserved better. He took a deep breath. He had seen enough. This wasn't just about a bad manager anymore. It was about fixing the culture of his company before it was too late. And Greg was about to find out exactly who he had been bossing around. Owen stood behind the counter, his hands tightening into fists. His heartbeat pounded in his ears, but he forced himself to stay still. Revealing himself now wouldn't get Bailey her job back. He needed to see what happened next. Greg acted like nothing had happened, returning to his spot near the office door. The other employees moved stiffly, avoiding eye contact with one another. The customers, who had witnessed everything, whispered among themselves. A few shook their heads in disgust before leaving without ordering. Owen turned to the kitchen, where two workers hesitated, watching Greg. One of them, a young man with tired eyes and grease stains on his sleeves, muttered under his breath. The other, a woman who had been handling the fryers, looked like she wanted to say something but bit her lip instead. No one challenged Greg. Owen knew why. They were scared. He grabbed a wet towel and started wiping down the counter, a simple excuse to move closer to the kitchen. As he approached, he caught the woman's eye. Her name tag read Mia. "Does that happen a lot?" Owen asked quietly. Mia tensed. "What?" "People getting fired over nothing." She darted a glance at Greg, who was scrolling through his phone, oblivious to their conversation. Her voice dropped lower. "You're new, keep your head down." Owen didn't reply. He didn't have to, he had seen enough. The shift dragged on. Greg barked orders but did little work himself. Customers were treated like an inconvenience rather than the reason the restaurant even existed. Employees barely spoke, working with the mechanical precision of people who were used to being ignored or berated. By the end of the night, Owen had memorized the patterns. The workers weren't incompetent, they were exhausted. Greg didn't manage, he controlled. There was no teamwork, only fear. When the last customer left, Greg clapped his hands together. "All right, clean up fast. Want to clock out on time?" "No, good job. No, thank you." Owen grabbed a mop and started on the floors. As he worked, he caught snippets of hushed conversations. "Did you see how fast she left?" "Bailey was the only reason I didn't quit months ago." "Greg's gonna replace her with someone even worse." Owen set the mop aside and walked to the back, where Greg was counting the register. "You really fired her just like that?" Owen asked. Greg didn't even look up. "You got a problem." "She gave away one sandwich. That's worth losing a good employee." Greg finally met his gaze, his expression blank. "It's not about the sandwich, it's about control. If I let her break one rule, the rest think they can do whatever they want. Then what?" Owen studied him. Greg wasn't just bad at his job, he enjoyed power. "You don't think customers noticed?" Owen asked. Greg scoffed. "They'll forget in a week. People always do." Owen's jaw tightened. Greg leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Look, you're new, so I'll give you advice. You want to last here? Follow my lead. Don't get attached to people who don't matter." Owen let the words sink in. This wasn't just about one bad decision. Greg had built an entire culture of fear in this store. Owen gave a small nod and walked away, but inside, his decision was made. Bailey was getting her job back, and Greg was done. Owen sat in the back of the break room, arms crossed, waiting. The restaurant had closed for the night, and the last of the employees were finishing up their tasks. Greg was in his office, running the final numbers. Owen had seen enough. He stood and walked toward the office door, knocking once before pushing it open. Greg barely looked up from the desk, tapping at a calculator with quick, impatient movements. "If you're not clocked out yet, do it now. I don't pay for overtime," Greg said without glancing at him. Owen stepped inside, shutting the door behind him. "We need to talk." Greg exhaled sharply, setting the calculator aside. "What is it now?" Owen reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and placed it on the desk. With a few swipes, he pulled up the company website, scrolling to the executive page where his own face stared back at them. Greg's eyes flicked to the screen, then back to Owen. His expression shifted, first to confusion, then to something closer to unease. "You recognize me now?" Owen asked. Greg sat back in his chair, his fingers tapping against the desk. "This some kind of joke?" Owen didn't blink. "No joke, I own this company." Greg's mouth opened slightly, then closed. He studied Owen's face, searching for any sign of deception. When he found none, his posture stiffened. Owen picked up the phone and slipped it back into his pocket. "I've spent the last 2 days working under you, watching how you run this place, and I have to say, I'm not impressed." Greg's jaw tightened. "You don't understand how things work on the ground level. Running a business from a corporate office is different from keeping a store in line." Owen leaned forward, resting his hands on the desk. "Keeping a store in line? That's what you call it. I watched you fire one of your best employees for showing basic human decency. I've seen how customers get treated, how your staff walks on eggshells around you. You don't manage this place, Greg. You rule it." Greg scoffed and crossed his arms. "This is a business, not a charity. If you start letting employees give out free food whenever they feel like it, you'll be out of money in a year." Owen didn't break eye contact. That kid wasn't just any customer, he was hungry, and that sandwich, it was going to be thrown out at the end of the night. Bailey did the right thing, and you punished her for it. Greg's expression remained guarded. "Rules are rules. If I start making exceptions, employees will take advantage. I did what needed to be done." Owen straightened. "Then let me be clear, you're done here. Effective immediately, you're no longer employed by this company." Greg stared at him, his face hardening. "You're firing me." "That's exactly what I'm doing," Owen said. "I can't have someone in charge who treats employees like they're disposable. You don't build a business by making people afraid of you." Greg's nostrils flared. "You think you can just walk in here and make decisions based on 2 days of work? I've been running this store for years. You have no idea how hard it is to keep things in order." Owen shook his head. "No, Greg, I built this company from nothing. I worked in kitchens, handled registers, scrubbed floors. I know exactly how hard it is. That's why I won't allow someone like you to keep running this place into the ground." Greg sat in silence, his fingers curling into fists. His face turned red, but he said nothing. Owen reached for the door. "Pack your things, you're done." Without waiting for a response, he walked out of the office, leaving Greg sitting in stunned silence. As Owen stepped into the front of the restaurant, the remaining employees had gathered near the counters. Some looked uncertain, others exchanged nervous glances. Mia stood near the back, arms folded, watching him carefully. Owen took a deep breath and addressed them directly. "Greg is gone, effective immediately." A ripple of shock passed through the group. A few exchanged quick looks, some with surprise, others with relief. Owen continued. "I know things haven't been easy here. I've seen it firsthand. That changes now. This store is going to be run with respect for both employees and customers. No more intimidation, no more fear. Mia stepped forward. What about Bailey? Owen met her gaze. She's getting her job back if she wants it. A few employees exhaled in quiet relief. Mia nodded, her shoulders relaxing slightly. Owen glanced at the group. If you have concerns, I want to hear them. If this store is going to succeed, it's going to be because of you, not in spite of you. For the first time since he had started this undercover stint, the tension in the room seemed to lift. Employees who had been afraid to speak up now looked at him with something closer to hope. Owen knew there was still work to be done. Fixing the culture of one store was just the beginning. But tonight, he had taken the first step toward making things right. Owen wasted no time. As soon as Greg left the building, he pulled out his phone and placed a call to Bailey. It rang several times before she finally picked up. Her voice was wary, likely recognizing the restaurant's number. "Bailey, this is Owen Caldwell," he said. A heavy silence followed, then a hesitant, the CEO. "Yeah," he confirmed. "I need to see you. Can you come back to the store?" She hesitated for a long moment before responding. "I don't work there anymore." "You do if you want to," Owen said. "Greg is gone, and I'd like to talk." Another pause, shorter this time. Then, "I'll be there in 10 minutes. Owen hung up and turned to the remaining employees, who were still processing everything. Some looked relieved, others cautious, but no one seemed upset that Greg was gone. "If any of you have thoughts on how we can make this place better, I want to hear them," Owen said. "Not just tonight, but moving forward. Things change today." Mia, still watching him carefully, finally spoke. "Is this real, or is some new district manager just going to come in and do things the same way Greg did?" "There'll be a new manager," Owen said, "but they won't be like Greg, and if they are, I expect you to let me know." The employees exchanged glances. Owen could see it in their faces. They wanted to believe him, but trust wasn't built in a single conversation. He'd have to earn it. Minutes later, the front door opened and Bailey stepped inside. She had changed into casual clothes, her work uniform gone. Her expression was cautious, but she held her head high. Owen gestured for her to follow him into the office. Once inside, she crossed her arms. "What's this about?" "You should never have been fired," he said simply. "I want you to come back." Bailey studied him. Greg made it very clear that feeding someone was against policy. "Greg was wrong," Owen said. "No employee of mine will ever be punished for showing basic human decency." Bailey's stance softened slightly, but she still looked skeptical. And what happens when corporate changes its mind? When the next manager decides that kindness isn't good for business? Owen leaned forward. "That's not going to happen. I'm implementing a new policy across all locations. If there's leftover food at the end of the night, employees will be allowed to donate it to those in need. No more throwing away perfectly good meals." Bailey's eyes widened slightly. "You're serious?" "Completely," he said. "And I'd like you to be part of making this store better. You were one of the only people here actually trying to do the right thing. I need people like you." Bailey was quiet for a moment, clearly weighing her decision. Then, with a small nod, she said, "I'll come back, but only if things really change." "They will," Owen assured her. When they stepped back into the main area, the employees looked up. When they saw Bailey, several of them visibly relaxed. Mia gave a small approving nod. Owen turned to the group. "This isn't just about fixing what Greg did. It's about making sure this place is better for all of you. That starts now." For the first time since he had walked through these doors, he saw something shift in their expressions. It wasn't just relief, it was hope. Owen knew the work wasn't over. If anything, it was just beginning. But tonight, he had taken the first step in making sure his company was something he could be proud of again. Owen arrived at the restaurant early the next morning. The air outside was crisp, the streetlights still glowing faintly against the dawn. He unlocked the front door and stepped inside, greeted by the scent of coffee brewing and the quiet hum of refrigeration units. Bailey was already there, tying her apron with quick efficiency. She glanced up when she saw him, her expression still guarded but less tense than before. Mia stood near the register, counting the till for the morning shift. A few other employees trickled in, exchanging nods but not much else. The weight of what had happened the night before still lingered. Greg was gone, and the employees knew things were changing, but skepticism held firm. Owen understood that trust wasn't rebuilt overnight. Bailey adjusted the sleeves of her uniform and finally spoke. "So, what happens now?" Owen leaned against the counter. "First, I want to know what's actually been going on here, not just with Greg, but everything. What's been making this place hard to work at?" Mia closed the register drawer with a quiet click. "You mean besides him?" Bailey exhaled, glancing at the others. "Schedules are a mess. People don't know when they're working until the last minute, and Greg used to change shifts without telling anyone. If someone complained, he'd cut their hours." A younger employee, a cashier named Lewis, hesitated before adding, "He also played favorites. Some people barely worked but got the best shifts. The rest of us had to pick up the slack." Owen nodded. He had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed made his jaw tighten. "What about customers? Have there been complaints?" Mia folded her arms. "Plenty. Orders were wrong because we were short-staffed, wait times were long because he refused to schedule enough people, and if someone tried to bring it up, Greg just blamed us." Bailey added, "We had regulars who stopped coming. Some of them told me the place felt different, colder." Lewis hesitated again, rubbing the back of his neck. He also kept the kitchen understaffed on purpose, said too many people back there wasted money. Half the time we couldn't keep up, and he'd just scream at us instead of helping. Owen exhaled slowly. He had expected problems, but what he was hearing painted a picture far worse than just one manager's bad behavior. Greg's leadership had poisoned the culture of the store, and now it was up to Owen to fix it. He straightened. "All right, first, schedules are getting fixed. No more last-minute changes and no more punishing people for speaking up. Second, we're hiring more staff for the kitchen. No one should be running around trying to do 3 jobs at once." The employees exchanged glances, cautious but listening. Owen continued, "As for customers, we're reaching out to the ones who left. I'll be putting together a team to handle that, making sure they know things are different now." He turned to Bailey. "I want you to help with that." She blinked. "Me?" "You were the one customers trusted. You saw what was wrong before anyone else spoke up. I need someone who understands what this place should be." Bailey studied him for a moment, then gave a small nod. Mia shifted her weight. "And what about the new manager? Who's replacing Greg?" Owen met her gaze. "Haven't decided yet, but I can promise this: whoever takes over will respect this team, and if they don't, I want to hear about it immediately." Lewis hesitated before speaking again. "And if someone like Greg gets hired again, what if it all goes back to the way it was?" Owen didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled out his phone, tapped a few buttons, and turned the screen toward them. It was his direct email address. "If anything starts going wrong again, you email me. Directly. No managers, no middlemen. If I don't hear about problems, I can't fix them." The employees stared at the screen, absorbing what he was offering. Bailey finally nodded. "All right, let's see if you mean it." Owen nodded back. He knew actions spoke louder than words, and today those actions were beginning.